I'm excited to have Jennie Love on the Flower Podcast this week. Welcome, Jennie.
Thank you, Scott. I'm excited to be here.
I can't believe this worked out. This is going to be airing the week of American Flowers Week, which I can't think of anyone better to host, to be my guest on this episode. So I'm really stoked about this. I know you reached out to me, was it a few weeks, maybe a month or two ago? Anyway, it's in the middle of COVID, which we're still in as we
right.
this. It's just crazy. I know we're going to get into all of that hot mess, but I really wanted to find out, okay, so how did you get into the flower business? As I like to ask some people, have you always been a flower child, or was this something new that developed in life?
Yeah, I think my story isn't that atypical. The only difference might be that I grew up on a farm. So I grew up on a dairy farm, a fifth generation dairy farm in central Pennsylvania. So I was a farm kid from the start, but like most farm kids, I decided that I wanted to run away to the big city and be like super cool and live in a high rise and, not be dirty every day and not sweat every day. And so that was what I did. Once I graduated from high school, I decided to move. I went to college first and got my degrees in I got a couple, but comparative world literature, communications, and business development. And then I went to work for corporate companies for 10 years in Philadelphia, where I moved to in 2000. And then after doing that for a decade, I decided I really missed, being dirty and sweaty and hot and bug bitten and sunburned.
Funny how that works.
It is funny how that works. My mom always told me that I would go back to a farmer one day, and I was like, I will never do that. And look at me now. So I started out then in my next path in farming was to volunteer for an urban farm in Philadelphia called Weaver's Way Farm, and was interested in vegetable production at the time. And I really was interested in starting an urban farm. But then what happened is I realized vegetable production really wasn't going to cut the mustard, so to speak, for a small, tiny micro farm in the city. You just don't make as much money per square foot as possible. I was also really enamored with flowers. I always grew flowers when I was younger in my garden as a kid. And so I just had a natural penchant for flowers and decided, maybe flowers are where it's at. And then I read Amy Stewart's book, which I feel like everybody reads and is immediately amazed at. And so I read her book, Flower Confidential, and was just blown away that this industry at the time, that book came out in 2008, I believe. And at the time, it seemed like an industry so rife for change to make a difference. And so that's when I thought, well, wow, I'm going to just do this thing where I'm going to farm flowers, grow all the flowers, and then I'm going to design all the flowers. I'm going to just do this. And that was 2008. I started my first very small garden for cut flowers and started selling them at a farmer's market. And then in 2009, somebody asked me to do a wedding that had bought flowers from me at the farmer's market. And I thought, well, here we go. I'm going to just do it. And I always joke that weddings happened to me and I didn't happen to weddings. Like it's like a reverse role. Like everybody just assumes that I went out there to be like an amazing wedding florist. I had zero intention. They just kind of snowballed. I did one, and I think my first in 2009 I did I think 4 that year, and they were very small, little, like what I call mason jar weddings. We were in a recession at that time.
Sure.
And then and then 2 years later I was doing 72 weddings.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I did this crazy escalation in weddings that I should probably never have attempted, and really maxed myself out in many ways. But I was committed the entire time to what is now called a farmer-florist model. At the time when I first started, that term really wasn't floating around. It was a hashtag that I actually started way back when. And so
you started that.
I believe I was the first person to ever use the hashtag farmer-florist. I didn't
Wow.
know what I was doing. I just wanted to, I don't know, I was really new to Instagram. There was nobody else on there. I mean, I was very early in the Instagram game. And so there weren't many other flower farmers on there. And I just kind of tried to find other ones. But anyways, long story short, yeah, it evolved into a highly wedding focused business model where Love and Fresh Flowers is entirely dedicated to using only locally grown flowers and by and large only the flowers that my farm grows. And since then, it's been a real evolution in terms of how we handle weddings and the scale. You know, started with little mason jar weddings and eventually ramped up to our kind of average floral budget at this time for our larger weddings is $15,000, but we've done ones that are over 30,000 for the floral budget, and that's just with what our farm can grow. So that's the
Wow.
brag about the budget. That's more to give listeners an understanding of how a small flower farm can actually compete in the more elite market of the wedding world. So, and that's always been one of my goals, is to prove that locally grown flowers are indeed just as elegant as any other flower you can pull out of the hat, and that it's a viable model. So yeah, and then COVID happened, so we can talk about that.
Yeah, crazy.
Talk
Well,
about that.
yeah, before we get there, I'm kind of curious. I'm really glad that you shared that budget thing, because I'm that number, because I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, 72 weddings and farming is a lot. And so, you know, and if you think if they're smaller size pickup weddings or smaller installations, you know, drop off and goes, okay, you kind of see that. But to get to budgets of those kinds of numbers on top of everything else you're doing, that's pretty crazy. Now, were you, when you did, because I'm sure somebody will want to know, when you were doing weddings, was that the only way you were selling your flowers, or were you doing like farmers markets or CSAs or anything like that?
Yeah, so when I first, that's a great question. When I first started out, I continued farmers markets for 2 seasons after I started doing weddings. Like I said, weddings happened to me. I didn't really
Sure.
try.
Right. Well, that's what I was trying to
So
figure out.
so I really started farming intending to be a farmers market farmer who did beautiful designs and took them to the farmers market. Like I intended to design, but I didn't necessarily intend to do weddings. So I continued for farmers markets for 2 more seasons, but what was happening is that the most lucrative farmers markets are on Saturdays or Sundays.
Sure.
Weddings are on Saturdays and Sundays. So eventually I had to make the decision to let go of the farmers markets, even though I still miss being at farmers markets. But then what evolved alongside weddings is my flower CSA. So, and at the time, back in, you know, for the first 8 years of my flower CSA, it was a side note, a footnote to my business, which it's really changed this year. But the reason the CSA evolved is because, so it's a CSA, community supported agriculture, the same model that a lot of vegetable farms use, but it's just flowers. It's not a vegetable CSA, it's a flower CSA. And it evolved because what I do at Love and Fresh Flowers and have done from the beginning is that I custom grow flowers for each of our wedding couples. So that means when somebody books a wedding with Love and Fresh Flowers, I sit down and do a crop plan specific to their what they have in mind, their colors, their style, all within the parameters where I get to say, like, look, I'm in charge.
Right.
You have to like trust me and let me be the expert that I am. But I am custom growing for each couple. So that means that in the world of flowers in any capacity, there's always a lot of shrinkage and, you know, change and so forth, but add on the fact that I farm these flowers. So I always have to add in 20% additional crop planning to cover my bases in case something goes wrong with the crop that I had planned for them. So as a result, in a good year, in the best of years, I'm going to have 20% more flowers than I needed for weddings. And so in the end, usually it's only about 10% or maybe 8%. And so I needed a place for those flowers to go. I didn't want to throw them on a compost pile. So what I started then was a flower CSA back in 2009, I think was the first year I did the flower CSA. And I had always kept it small because I didn't want to, it wasn't my primary business. It was just this outlet for extra flowers. And so usually it had maybe 20 to 30 members up until this year. So it was a very small little footnote in the floral equation and didn't make us a lot of money per se. But it was a great way to get out there, and it actually generated more market share, so to speak, for Love and Fresh Flowers in the Philadelphia area, because our CSA members are our biggest champions. They are out there constantly talking about how amazing our flowers are. And anytime somebody mentions getting married, they're like immediately like saying, do you know about Love and Fresh Flowers? Let me tell you all about Love and Fresh Flowers. So the CSA has really been an amazing tool for marketing, if nothing else. But yeah, that was the other way we sold flowers. And then I do a lot of teaching. So I consider myself as much of a floral educator as I do a flower farmer. And so I've been doing workshops at my farm since 2013. And I started teaching offsite off of the farm in 2010 because I didn't have the right space to teach at the farm until 2013. So what's that, 7 years ago? I started teaching here at the farm. And
Crazy.
that's been a huge piece of the puzzle too. And it's been really a joy to bring people to the farm and get to immerse them in the space and in the natural process of flowers instead of just stiff, rigid stems in a bucket. They actually are here. They see it. And it's amazing the sort of the metamorphosis that a lot of people go through when they're in the space. So yeah,
Well,
so that's pretty much it.
well, I feel like, the one thing that does is it provides that connection, like you said, and it's the experience. I mean, there's no better way to appreciate what you do by bringing them into that sacred space of where you grow and you sweat and you bleed and you do everything to make that magic happen. And that's where they can truly grasp and appreciate what you do.
And in the beginning, I'll just tag on. In the beginning, that I was so nervous to let people come and see the farm. As farmers or gardeners, we just see the weeds. We just, feel the anxiety of all the work that still needs to be done, and it's not perfect. And I also honestly had a tremendous amount of anxiety about there not being enough flowers in the field. Because there aren't that many flowers in the field. That's one of the misconceptions of flower farms that I've had to literally watch people crestfallen when they first arrive, because they're expecting these epic photo opportunities of standing in, head-high dahlia patches or whatever. And that's not my farm. My farm is a working, operating farm, and we pick every flower out there.
Right. Well, it's a difference. The difference of a flower farm and a garden.
Right, exactly.
Because I always tell people, especially if we're going on site or doing something, like, let me know the day before you're getting ready to harvest, because if I come the day after, I mean, people expect there to be just fields of flowers. And it's kind of like, well, if there are, then you're doing something wrong, because that's your money sitting out there just aging away. So
exactly, Scott. Yeah. That's what everybody needs to understand and learn. Our farm doesn't actually have any flowers in the field. They're all in the cooler, or they're already sold. That's the way you do it.
Exactly.
So that's been part of the education process. But I love that about my workshops now. And that was just to say to anybody who's listening who's a flower farmer and has been anxious about starting workshops on site, I would tell you to just get out there and do it, and be brave about your message to your customers that come, because it's so wonderful. Because once they get over that, oh, there's not any flowers out there, and I walk them around and I explain to them exactly what we're doing, and I get to do all the education. After they leave here, they're just like, whoa, mind blown. And so it's a really great platform to help people understand what farming really is. Yeah.
Wow. Well, so I wasn't planning on going here, but you said this earlier, and my brain is just like cringing that I have to ask this question. I can't imagine what it's like. Okay, so before I ask this question, I drive everybody crazy with this. How big is the property you grow on?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the farm, what is in production at the moment is a little over 3 acres. And I have access to 6 acres in total. I own 4 acres and the other 2 acres are leased. And so we're growing very, very intensively on the acreage that I have. And the acres that I do have, it's about, at this point, it's about 50% woody shrubs. And then it used to be 50% annual, more, quick production thing.
Sure.
But over time, I've really tried to switch and change that to be, at this point, I'd say we're about 25% annuals and 25% perennials. So 50% woody, 25% annual, 25% perennial. But there's a big but to this. I have, over the past 4 years, perennialized my dahlias. So now,
Oh, wow.
if you count my dahlias as perennials, then we are down to maybe 10% annuals, which really changes the production level of this very small farm. And it's been one of my like deep passions about what I'm doing at this point, because that's a whole nother subject to go into the concept of regenerative agriculture and no-till and building soil life. And that's actually really my biggest driving force at this point. But what I want to communicate to flower podcast listeners is that a small space can be super productive, basically.
Sure.
Can do this level of production.
So going back to my question that I didn't ask, yeah. I cannot imagine trying to custom grow per wedding. So you sit down with a couple, you plan a date, you figure out the palette, I'm assuming there's some approval-ish process. And
not much, actually.
Yeah, I know. Well, I was going to say, when you're a farmer-florist, you often, that's why they come to you, because they trust you and they want that look. So I get that. But but timing production to be ready for when you need it, to me, things can be early, things can be late, it can be overcast for half of the month and it slows everything down, or colder than you thought and it slows things down, or hotter than you thought it speeds things up, or who knows.
Yeah.
And so I can't imagine. And then of course the good thing about, I guess, being heavy to perennials and woodies is you kind of know when they're going to be around.
That's it. Yeah.
So that probably is your driving force for those events, where the annual timing thing is a little different situation. So I just love to hear your thoughts, as I'm amazed at your ability to do that. So.
Well, for starters, I didn't ace this, and I still haven't aced this, but I definitely didn't ace this task in the beginning. I mean, you have to remember, I've been doing this since 2008. So
sure.
So it's really like my 13th season, right? If you count the seasons, I think I'm on my 13th year at this point. And so it took a long time to master that. And the beauty was that I started out with that model from the very beginning, so that the scale of my events was increasing as my knowledge was increasing. So it wasn't like I started out planning the crops for a $30,000 wedding right at the beginning. My very first wedding was like, I'm kind of embarrassed to say, it was like $400.
We all have to start somewhere. Don't be embarrassed.
Right. Exactly.
That's how you learn.
So exactly. So I was pacing myself with the scale of the events, but in the end, what my crew always laughs at me, especially my design crew. I have this saying that I believe so fundamentally in my heart and soul, is that you have to trust the field. That's what whenever everybody else is in a panic, because they're like, how are we going to do this wedding? I'm always like, trust the field, trust the field. Everybody thinks I'm crazy, but it's worked out every single time, Scott. There has never been a time when I've been royally screwed by nature. And I believe very wholeheartedly in this reciprocal relationship with nature, where you give and nature gives back. Nature is all about having balance through a barter system. And so here I am as a farmer trying to nurture and steward the land and provide a really dynamic landscape in which there's tons of biodiversity, and especially when it comes to plant life, And as a result, Mother Nature's out there giving back. I mean, whether you believe that she's a cognizant entity or not is up to everybody's belief pattern. But for me, I just watch the field do its thing. My job is just simply to plan and hope for the best, and then step back and step out of the process until it's time to just go out there and harvest, which takes a tremendous amount of faith. Like not like religious faith, but it just takes guts, frankly. And it's not like I'm a hero out here. It's just, I don't know, it's just what I was committed to. It's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do weddings the way everybody else does weddings. And so ultimately, to answer your question a little bit more specifically, not such a spiritual answer, but yes, you hit the nail on the head. This is why I've moved so heavily towards a perennial system, be it shrubs, dahlias, or something like Baptisia. Once something's perennialized, it's far less susceptible to swings in weather and changes and all of that. So you can rely on things a lot more. Also, what's unique about perennials, anything perennialized, is that then you can rely on the genealogy calendar. I've worked really hard to record my own genealogy calendar over the years, which for those that don't know, that just means that you pay attention to what is blooming or sprouting, or however you want. I pay attention to blooms. So I pay attention to what's blooming every year and make a note. I have like 5 to 10, I used to have a much longer list. Over time, I've whittled it down to 5 to 10 plants that I can really, once I see that blooming, then I know the next 3 weeks are probably going to be like this, unless something really weird happens. And that helps me plan in a real-time scenario, so to speak. And then it's just all about being really flexible as a designer and building trust in the clients, where they're just like, I promise zero anything. I will be there and I will fulfill the value of our contract, but in terms of what they're getting, my contract even says there's no guarantee here. Other than that, we're going to show up and we're going to have something beautiful. But other than that, the rest is up to nature.
So you don't even go color specific at all, or
nope. My contract says very specifically, we do not guarantee any colors or hues. And I've stuck to it over the years. That being said, I've never, thanks to that beautiful relationship with nature and trusting the field, I've never had to sway from a client's palette, not even once.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's always worked out. So that's how we roll. It sounds crazy. I know it's utterly crazy, but I want to encourage other people to consider trying to come into stride with nature and walk, parallel with nature instead of
hand in hand.
On. Yeah, exactly. And just trust the field.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. And I feel like that's one of the advantages, I believe, of starting to grow your business, no pun intended, in the market setting, because you develop this connection with your customers. They get to know you, you get to know them, you get to hear feedback, you get to see what's more popular than other things, if it's not all of it. There's some real give and take from an information standpoint and a relationship standpoint, that once that doorway kind of cracks open, you can really build a solid foundation of a business the way you did. And I believe wholeheartedly, when people come to you to do that wedding, if they're not the right fit, they're not the right fit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm really quick to kick people to the curb. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We don't say yes to a lot of the weddings that come our way at this point, and that's not in a snobby way at all. It's just after you've been at this long enough, Scott, I'm sure you know the same sensation. If you've been doing this long enough, you've got a spidey sense about, like, this is not nope, not right. And when I was a newer floral professional, I had a hard time listening to that spidey sense, but now spidey sense rolls. I know as soon as I feel it, I'm like, we're just going to say we're booked for that date and we're going to move on, and I always refer, my spidey sense is also very attuned to what about it is making me uncomfortable. And then I can usually think of the right florist to recommend. So I never just I always actually figure out who would be the right fit and send them that way. So it works out for everybody. The whole industry is healthier as a result. Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure they appreciate that. And
Yeah.
and people appreciate not, not wasting time, wasting their time, your time.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like there's less drama because if you can nip it in the bud, there's all these gardening puns we're going to have all day long. So if you can nip it in the bud and just help that person move on to a happier place,
yes.
it's a win-win for everybody. And I totally get it. So,
yeah.
Okay. So let me ask this question. And I can tell at our time that we probably could talk for hours. How do you handle those situations when maybe you don't have enough product? Like maybe you have a lot of flowers, but but it is a bigger budget. So do you have farmer friends that you go get flowers from, or how do you handle those situations?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I should make a note of for listeners is that I actually don't encourage people to do my model anymore. Frankly, like what I do is incredibly stressful. Like it's stupid stressful. It makes zero sense why I do this.
I know we're gonna talk about that a little bit.
Right.
But
it's what drove me. It's my driving passion to just embrace this. And I have different, if anybody's curious, over on my website, there's something called Guiding Beliefs. And you can read that and read all about the things that drive me personally to do what I do. But I want to say that I do coach a lot of newer growers and farmer florists. And when I'm coaching them, I tell them, don't do what I do. Like actually build a network of growers who are near you. And I think that's ultimately the healthier model for the floral industry, and particularly for flower farmers, is that we don't all try to compete for the same pot, but instead we specialize in one person really has dahlias nailed. So, okay, you're the dahlia grower. Then this other person really has lisianthus nailed, and so I think it's a lot better model where maybe each person is a farmer florist and takes on their own events, but then reach out to the people that actually grow something better than you do, because that's a real thing. So I do have about 3 growers that I work with nearby. One of them has 5 acres under plastic, under hoop houses.
Oh, wow.
So he's my go-to when things really hit the fan and it's like, okay, I need something, It's usually early in the spring when there's just too much roulette going on out there in the field. Right. And then I have a grower who's literally, I think he's less than half a mile down the road from me. Used to be a former employee, actually started his own flower farm. And so he's who I go to if suddenly like, oh my gosh, I just need like 10 more stems of purple dahlias. Let's, what do you got? And then, so that's a good like fallback. And then one of the other growers just is like sort of my, I don't buy from her very often, but she's there. So it's important to have a network. And then I will say for full transparency that I have accounts with 3 wholesalers. And I think that's really important if you want to get into the world of weddings as a grower, is that you can't just be on a song and a prayer. This is a contractual relationship that you could get in really big trouble if you can't control it. So I always encourage farmer florists to get contracts or get accounts with wholesalers, so that you just have that there. You're going to need to order hard goods anyway, like where you're going to have to get floral glue and tape and vases and stuff like that. So you might as well have those accounts set up and really understand the whole floral industry, not just this like little piece of it. It's really good to know everything about the industry. So yes, have lots of options is the moral to the story.
Well, you've left this wonderful breadcrumb trail that we could talk about like a dozen more things you just mentioned, but I know that one of the reasons why I was so excited to have you on as a guest is you've had for years, as we've heard, this incredible business model, and COVID hits and everything is scheduled, or everything scheduled is canceled or postponed, mostly postponed, I think. And and you have flowers, quote unquote, literally in the field.
Yep.
And now you have spring blooms, early summer blooms, and what do you do? Because you don't have relations. You can't just go to a market because most of them are closed.
Yep.
You couldn't call up a wholesaler because most of them are closed, even if you wanted to. The flower shops are closed, and so now I've set you up for this incredible story, and I really can't wait to hear how and what you did. So
oh yeah, well yeah, COVID has been obviously a kick in the gut to everybody, and my story, I always like to just say that, like, my story is intense, but also there's people who have gone through so much more than I have.
well, sure.
In capacity. So, but from my perspective, what COVID did was we start weddings the last week of March and take wedding every year, the last week of March until the third weekend of October. That's our season here at Love and Fresh Flowers, because that's what I can grow confidently in. And so we had a wedding scheduled the last weekend of March, and due to COVID, that canceled very last minute. And then it was just it was like watching a train that just was going off the rails, and you just had no power. And I was in shock for weeks, but there's no time to be in shock when you have a whole field full of flowers, because, we were ready for production. We were ready to rock and roll. And so it's been an emotional roller coaster, to say the least, but I'll just talk more concretely about what happened. So initially, as soon as I saw what was happening, I decided to start what I called the Flower Club, which was I sold it immediately, and it sold out immediately. And it was that people could buy a package. I don't even call it a package. It's like you get those like little business cards that stamp like you punch a punch card where you like,
oh yeah,
one free kind of concept. It was based loosely on that, but what it was is that for the month of April, people who bought a Flower Club pass could come to the farm on Tuesdays, I think it was Tuesdays, and get a bouquet. And so that helped. I could estimate how many bouquets I could make a week in April, which is it's not an abundant month for us. So we ended up doing 25 April Flower Club members. And that was really, that was just a knee-jerk reaction to just try to sell the April flowers. I knew they were coming. I knew I needed to get it done. And in the end, what that did was help me better understand the power of flowers, flower power, in this moment, in this crisis, in this change in our culture. I witnessed, and I just on a whim started writing a message on the paper. We use a craft paper sleeve on all of our bouquets because we're really dedicated to sustainability. And so you can write with a Sharpie on these sleeves. So I started writing just quick little notes to people. Just simple things like shine on, you beautiful soul, or this journey's hard, but keep on going, or you did great today. Don't, listen to your inner voice. I don't know, just lots of, it's always random.
Positive things, yeah.
Positive, but kind of random. It's just what I'm feeling in the moment that I wish I could say to myself, to be honest, in my own pep talk. And then when you write it out on 25 paper sleeves, you start to like really actually get it yourself. But what I noticed is those messages coupled with the flowers themselves literally brought people to tears. Like there was just like so much crying in a positive way within the space, because I was witnessing that. And then I started to get it. I was like, okay, I've been focused for so long in this career on providing exceptional flowers for exceptional events, special, super special life events. And maybe in the end, the real power of flowers is to just have them in your everyday life and have them be the beautiful grounding energy that you need in a space, particularly when we're all freaking out. Right. So I, once witnessing that, I decided, well, we're gonna help people this way, and also help the farm, ideally.
Well, sure.
So I developed this thing called porch petals, which isn't a unique concept. There's lots of people or lots of farmers doing it for sure. But it's just that every Friday we send out deliveries into the world, into our neighborhood, and those keep consistently selling out. So that, and then I developed something called the season pass, which was in addition to the flower club that I first started was just for the month of April. And I learned a lot from that process. And I was glad I only sold it for like 1 month, because then I could understand some logistics about how to better run this operation. So then the season pass was born. And if anybody's listening who would like to better understand that, please just go to my online shop and you can read everything over there. It's shoploveandfreshflowers.com is the website. So if you'd like to model something off of that, you're totally welcome to. But the concept is that people will be invited. They buy a season pass just the way you'd buy a season pass to like Dorney Park or Great Adventure or SeaWorld or whatever. The concept is you come to the space, you get to enjoy the space, you get to be part of the space, and oh, you're going to take a souvenir home. So every time they come, they can have a bouquet or a bunch, and they have to sign up in advance so that we know what's coming. And then they're explicitly encouraged to walk around the farm, to be at peace in the farm, to observe nature at the farm. And it's been really amazing, Scott, like to see how this farm that I've created to serve really special events has now turned into a place that has really helped a lot of people. And I'm really grateful for that process. And it's given me a lot of thought about how do I want to move forward, even post-COVID. Who knows when post-COVID will be, but
Yeah.
So all of that to say that we've had tremendous support from the community. It's been a lot about messaging in a very positive way, like from a marketing element, like a positive message has really helped. And these people that we've been selling to since April, so now it's April, May, and June, we're going into July, our sales are going into July now. They are incredibly passionate about flowers now. People that never bought, we're hearing this left and right and center, like, I never even bought flowers before. Usually
Really?
first started the porch petals system that we did, which started in the beginning of May. Most of the bouquets that we were sending out, the messages, we would offer to write a specific message, or if nobody asked for a specific message, we'd just write one of the ones that I came up with. But almost to a T, the first round were gifts to other people that were saying like, oh my God, I miss you so much, or I know you're feeling really sad and wanted you to have these, or oh gosh, the baby was born and it's so sad that I can't hold them, but here's flowers, like things like that. And super powerful words. And as a result, all these people got our flowers that never got flowers before. And now they sign up for what we call our porch petals prescription, which is now they sign up for a whole month at a time and they get flowers every week. And it's a whole new world. It's amazing to see the appreciation and learning that are going on about flowers right now. And it gives me tremendous hope for the floral industry. We are a changed industry for sure. I don't know when the event industry will come back online, if ever, but the world of flowers is actually going to grow from COVID. I'm convinced of it. I'm absolutely convinced. So yeah, that was a really long answer. Sorry.
No, it was a perfect answer. It wasn't long enough because I have questions. And
Okay.
so, all right. So the porch petals is your Friday delivery.
Mm-hmm.
So like just to give somebody an idea, how many deliveries do you usually handle in like a day?
Yeah, so it depends again, we're a farm, so sometimes we've got more and sometimes we've got less. So I have to gauge in advance. I open up the online shop on Mondays for orders, and so that way I can gauge what's coming down the pike. So, but generally we've been doing about 80 deliveries on Fridays as kind of a average week. So, and those, one of the things that I always resisted doing any sort of delivery service is because I heard such horror stories about it from, other floral shop, people that had built floral shop model. And just that it was time consuming, and then people wouldn't be home, and then you would have to like worry about it, or where do you put the flowers, and people being unhappy with what you brought and all these things. So I was always anxious about it. But in the end, some things that I did to try and make our system work for our farm is nobody gets to order anything specific. It's just, you can choose a bouquet or a bunch of flowers. And usually the bunch of flowers isn't necessarily even specified. It's just 10 stems of something. And then our delivery route is limited to 5, well, I think now we're at 6 zip codes, but we limited it to zip codes. So that means our delivery process is so much more efficient. So instead of just going wherever anybody wants us to go, we have very targeted area, which means that my delivery driver, who happens to also be my office assistant, she's able to make about 80 deliveries in 5 hours. So it's pretty phenomenal.
That is insane.
It is. So in the end, it's super efficient. It's kind of nuts. I can't even believe it myself how efficient it is, but it's really working out super well. And again, I think it's because, well, I know it's because the deliveries are concentrated in specific zip codes, which has really helped for efficiency. But then what's also happening is, again, people are really getting so excited about our flowers. So, you know, a neighbor will tell another neighbor, like, oh my gosh, I get these deliveries on Fridays, you should totally sign up. And so then we have like houses that are literally like, you know,
Boom, boom, boom.
just going down the block, you know.
Crazy.
It's really built in and of itself, you know, as time goes on. So yeah, it's been great. It's phenomenal.
That's awesome. Okay, so the season pass, so that's where people are coming to the farm. Is that like, okay, this is where my brain just gets too many questions. So, first of all, I know that when I grew flowers, we were typically cutting most flowers about, let's just say, twice a week on average. You know, we would cut things sort of, you know, beginning of the week for retail people, or end of the week for markets or whatever. And so, anyway, that was our system, and everybody has their system. So how often are you cutting your, you know, product, or depend on the product and depend on the weather and everything else?
Yeah. So I am a big, before COVID even, I was a big fan of organizing things like harvesting according to a certain schedule so that it matched up with our production then as well. Not production of flowers, but production of sale. How were we selling it? And so in the past, our main harvest day was Mondays and Wednesday. And then we had a quick pick on Thursdays. And that was because in the past, our CSA is on Tuesdays, and we still have a CSA, and it has grown. I can't even, it's like incomprehensible how much our CSA has grown at this point, which is really becoming one of the biggest revenue streams for the farm in 2020.
Right.
But so the CSA still stands, and it's still on Tuesdays. But I'm just going to refer to pre-COVID. It was CSA on Tuesdays, and then weddings would be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so I wanted to pick heavily on Mondays so that I knew what flowers were coming in. I had a real sense of the bulk, you know, Mondays were our biggest pick. So I would have the real sense of what flowers I had. And then my job as head designer was to create the samples. So I wouldn't know what a wedding was going to look like until Monday afternoon. That's when I decided what a wedding would look like for the following, like the weekend.
That week, yeah.
That week. So I would use Monday afternoon after the big pick to make samples and determine. So that's why I had the Monday big pick. And then whatever wasn't getting used in the weddings that week would go into our CSA. So that's why the CSA was on Tuesdays and always has been on Tuesdays. So that meant I could clear the cooler essentially, except of just the things we need. And then on Wednesdays, we would pick again of the things that I decided that we needed. There usually be a fairly decent second flush by Wednesday. And then Thursday was my, what I call quick pick, because I would do it personally. And I would decide, I'd walk the field and determine, like, I would pick for maybe the bridal bouquet that day, you know, like I would be picking very specifically. So that's what Thursday pick was. Now, we still do the Monday pick. It's still the big pick. so that we can do the season pass is on Monday afternoons, then the CSA is on Tuesdays, and then the porch petal deliveries are on Friday. So we are doing a big pick on Monday to support the CSA on Tuesdays. Then we do a big pick on on Wednesdays to do porch petals, which we design on Thursday.
To be delivered Friday.
For Friday, to go out Friday. And then we pick on Fridays to hold in the cooler. And then I design all the season pass stuff on Monday morning while the crew is harvesting out in the field for the Tuesday stuff. So it's shifted, but it's still mostly 3 days of picking generally, to answer your question. So.
Yeah. So did you, once you have the season pass with social distancing and things, I love this idea, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I think now more than ever, especially while parks were closed. I mean, some of that's opened up now as we're talking, but
yeah.
But when things were so shut down, to create a safe place,
yes, exactly,
for people to be able to get outdoors, enjoy nature, see some pretty flowers. Maybe they pull a weed for you. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought about doing that. We have so many people offering to volunteer right now, but I am still a little cautious about integrating too many people in this space. But I will. Yeah. So the reason the season pass was born was because the farm is actually in Philadelphia. It's in the heart of the city, not like a little bit outside the city. We are in the heart of the city. And the parks in the open green spaces in Philadelphia during COVID have been like worse than going to the mall. They're like jam packed, shoulder to shoulder of people who are just all like confined and didn't know what to do. And during our stay at home order, one of the only things you really were allowed to do was to go out and exercise. That was like a valid thing to leave for. So everybody just exercised all day long, which means we're really healthy now. But what was happening is I was noticing that people were really uncomfortable with going to such a crowded space. And I knew I have, like acres of land here, that nobody's crowding. So I thought it would be really nice to create a way that people could experience a quieter, very uncrowded space. So our season pass is a scheduled experience.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, so they get 20 minutes at a time. And they sign up. So not everybody comes at once. There's, I think at this point, maybe 65 season pass holders. I actually don't know the current number, but but I limit it to 20-minute appointments. And so it's on Monday afternoons. So there's only, I forget how many slots that makes, but so there's only a certain number of people that can come on a given day. So we have a Google Doc. I think it's actually a Google form. Well, it's the Google thing that looks like an Excel spreadsheet, whichever one that is.
Yeah.
And they get a link. All season pass holders get a link that we send out on Thursday afternoons. And they can sign up whenever they want. But once all the slots are full, we don't take any more season pass holders for that coming Monday. And so that really limits the number of people that are at the farm, and it makes it a really quiet experience for them. And it's funny, the people that are coming are saying things like, I put on a bra today. Or, oh my God, I'm wearing lipstick. I'm wearing earrings. It's just like they haven't left their house, but they feel this is safe and they know it's going to be okay. And they come, and we don't make any contact with them. The flowers are set up in individual buckets inside the barn, which I'm currently in, which is a huge barn. The doors are wide open. And so they don't have to come in contact with anybody. They just pick up their bouquet and then they can walk around the farm. And we don't, I will always wave and say hello from a distance, but so they never feel crowded. And it's amazing what people really, the value they see in that. And it's really cool. So yeah, it's a great thing.
I love that. I love everything about that. I know the clock is ticking, and so I'm feeling this.
I told you I could talk forever.
Oh no, but I mean, I'm loving this. I'm learning so much, and I'm hoping our listeners are,
good.
because I just feel like, especially if it doesn't really matter where your business is located, that these ideas are something that anybody might be able to implement.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I was really grateful for you to being willing to share this. Of course, I would be remiss if we don't, for at least 5 or 10 minutes, talk about the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers, which I was excited. I didn't know that you're the big chief
I'm
there. Are you the president? Is that how this works?
I'm currently the acting president, yes. And I have to
Okay.
commend you for being able to say the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers without stumbling over that, because everybody does. So kudos to you, Scott.
Oh, thank you. I've actually been saying that probably though for close to 30 years.
Okay, that's right. You were with Alan. So
Yeah. So
perfect.
I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And so for people who maybe aren't a farmer and don't know what that is, I'd love for you to explain what it is. For people who
Sure.
are a farmer and don't belong to this incredible organization, I would love for you to explain what this is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm
Okay.
all ears.
Yeah, so the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers, we just shortened that to ASCFG. I don't know if that's any better, but that's what we call it in the group, ASCFG. And the website, for those that don't know, is ascfg.org. And I encourage everybody to go over to that website and check it out. There's also a sister website, which is localflowers.org. And that's a more of a site geared towards the general public. So those that are listening that are not farmers, but maybe want to get to know flower farmers, I would say go to the website localflowers.org, where all of our members are listed in a very easy to find map, and you can read more about why to grow or why to buy local flowers and so forth. So and the association has been around since, well, you probably know better than I, Scott, exactly the date, but it was founded at least 31 years ago. I don't know if we're at 32 years yet. Maybe we are. And it was founded as a way for flower farmers, flower growers. A lot of flower farmers consider themselves just more growers than flower farmers, so to speak. But the point was it was supposed to be a professional organization geared towards educating those who would like to be, hardcore growers of specialty cut flowers. And so, yeah, it started from what I know. I wasn't there in the beginning, but it started from a very small little group of very passionate, dedicated growers. And now I don't know the exact head count at the moment, but we have members now in many countries. It was started in the US, but we have a lot of international members now, including in New Zealand and Ireland and the UK and India. And so we've got a lot of members. I don't know the exact member count. I should have prepared for this interview.
No, that's okay.
It's a couple thousand now.
A lot.
Which was an exponential growth since when I joined. I joined the ASCFG in 2009. And when I joined, I think there were a grand total of 400 some members. So it was very small, and it's grown exponentially in recent years. And it's been really cool to witness that growth. The primary mission of the ASCFG is clearly stated on the website, so maybe it's better if everybody reads it. But the fundamental heart and core is to provide education on growing flowers. And as a result, we do a lot of things, like we have a mentorship program where we'll pair newer growers with more experienced growers.
I love that.
We have a lot of events too. So we either have 4 meetings a year or 1 national conference a year. This was supposed to be a national conference year, but due to COVID, we are rethinking all of that. But so there's a lot of in-person events that you can go to where they'll be very super nerdy about how do you grow a better garden rose for cutting? What are the varieties of garden roses that you should consider, and how do you do pest control, etc. That kind of thing. But there'll be also educational opportunities about marketing and growing a business and things like, accounting, enterprise budgeting. It's pretty intense. The education is amazing. And then there's a social network within the organization which lets growers talk to each other all the time. We currently use Facebook. We used to use another platform. We might use another platform again, but it's just the concept that you are in touch with other equally dedicated and professional and educated growers, so you can really ask all the questions that you need to ask and get really valid feedback from that. So it's really about building community and then providing hardcore quality education, all geared towards growing specialty cut flowers. So that's what we do. And the reasons to join, if you are a farmer, I think are pretty self-evident. The membership fee is what I consider very low for the value that people get out of it. I think it's currently $195 a year. We also offer scholarships if people are in really a challenging situation and then they need some financial help. So that's also available as well. And if you're not a flower grower, there are reasons to join as well. And one of those reasons is if you're a florist who's interested in connecting with flower growers, we do a lot of work to connect growers with florists. And then we also do a lot of design education at events for the ASCFG. So there's always a design track at all of our events. So we're not having it now. We're not having it in person now because of COVID, but for our national conference, we were going to do a whole afternoon of like hanging installations, how to do sustainable hanging installations. So there's a lot of value in it for florists as well. Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting because, being around it in the early stages, and this is the crazy thing, everybody. Okay. So to put it in perspective, back in the age of floppy disks,
Ooh.
Okay,
I remember those.
Does that date me or what? But I mean, that's when I was at Georgia, and at those early days. So you just think everything that technology has fallen into place only has made this organization better.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many times I'm talking with somebody who is a grower, and they talk about how isolating it feels, how you sometimes feel like you're just on this island and you're the one man, everything. Yep. And to have a community to belong to, and to connect. I know, I'm trying to remember who it was. I want to say it was Georgia Monroe when we interviewed her. I don't remember. Anyway, the bottom line was that there was another person in another part of the country that just because of geography, they had very similar situations. And of course, they didn't compete because they were states away, but they were huge help to each other.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, you just think, actually, I don't think it was Georgia, I think it was somebody else. But anyway, it's so tremendous of a resource for networking and or to get ideas. A lot of times people don't know what to grow. Well, when you, that was when I worked in wholesale and I coordinated with local growers. One of the questions I get, what ideas do you have for me to grow? What can I grow? What can I grow? And of course, when you see what all these other farmers are growing, because, that's one of the resources was like, you can look at flower. I guess you can still do that. And you can get ideas. And so, it's a great organization to be a part of.
It really is.
And it's a great network, and it's only gotten better. And I can only see it, especially through all this craziness, only continuing to get better. And I know that I think I even spoke at one of the Southeastern meetings one time, way back when, a million years ago.
Well, we'll have to have you again, of course.
My gosh. Well, sure, why not? But I was just, but it was like, it's just a great group of people, and it's kind of like all of a sudden you walk into a room of kindred spirits.
You belong. Yeah, that's one of the things is like you can feel. I found by and large and whole, most flower growers most farmers. We're not going to even talk flowers. A lot of farmers are, as you said, very isolated, and they're also very shy, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. That's why we get into it. I'm an introvert. I farm because I can't show up at an office every day. I get tired. So it's amazing to watch. And I felt it myself when I first walked into my first conference, which was on Long Island ages ago. But it was like I walked in and there was no barrier. There was no anxiety. Like, it was just like everybody was talking about the same thing that I like to talk about. And it was so easy to jump in and be like, I know, I love, rocket snapdragons too. And like all of these things. So there's that. And then what you also hit on that I think is super important to emphasize is this concept of all the members in the association can help each other so well, because a lot of times we're not in competition with each other. There's a lot of times when, like you said, there's a grower on one side of the country and a grower on the other side of the country experiencing very similar things. So no way are they ever going to sell to the same people. So they're hitting different people, but they can really help each other figure out the right way or the best way to do that. And so it's been really great to help the entire industry, the local flower movement, build on itself. I credit the ASCFG with making me the flower farmer that I am. I would be nowhere without all the education that I've received there. And that's one reason I wanted to be president. I'm only president for 3 years, short-term gig, but I really felt compelled to lead because there had been so much that had been given to me as a new grower in the beginning that literally built Love and Fresh Flowers. Love and Fresh Flowers could not be what it is without the ASCFG. And so that's why I think it's my job to help give back in that capacity. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of giving back, I know that you have an online course that, and I realize, you're not about really big self-promotion here, but I know. But it is good that if you have something that can help people, I want you to share it because, whether or not that's your sweet spot, it doesn't matter. If you can help somebody, I know you want to. So tell us a little bit about your course.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I just, I started a course called, I started something called the Farmer-Florist School Online, which is in collaboration with Lisa Ziegler at the Gardener's Workshop. So if people want to learn more about it, I can send you a link, Scott, that you can put up, but go to the Gardener's Workshop website and then you can get into the school webpage from there. But so it's called the Farmer-Florist School Online, and the course itself is called the Wedding Process. And the Wedding Process course is just geared very heavily towards helping people who want to learn how to kind of do what I do. But like I said, I'm going to encourage everybody to partner with other growers. So I'm not necessarily trying to get a lot of mini-me's, but what I do in the course, it's a 6-week-long course. You sign up once a year. So it's not an ongoing course, it's just 6 weeks. But during the course, I'm very focused on my students, very available. I swore I would never teach an online course, by the way. It's like, I still don't understand that I taught an online course, but it works because I am able to really connect. So I lay out everything that we talked about here in this podcast. I lay out like, how do I do crop planning? How do I talk to customers so that they can understand my process and that they know they don't know anything about their wedding flowers until they show up at the venue. So I walk through all of that in great detail, provide a lot of handouts and so forth. So it is a really good course. I feel very confident in its ability to help people. So there's that, the Wedding Process course through the Gardener's Workshop. And then I am currently developing a course called Marketing Magic for Small Farms, which will be launched later this summer. So that'll be an on-demand course that people can just click and get right into. So it's about 6 hours long. And hopefully that'll help a lot of people with things like this direct-to-market retail, setting up on an online shop, learning how to take good photos for the online shop, and all of these things to just help small farms excel now that we are literally I don't think we're going back. This is the one thing I have to say about COVID is I don't think we're going back to the old way of doing business. No matter what happens, the vaccine comes or whatever, people still expect to buy online now. They expect contactless delivery and convenience and a quick click, like that's going to stay with us. And so it's really about helping farms understand how to tap into that convenience mentality while still telling their story and helping them connect with customers in a personal way that creates these champions of your farm, which is the only way Love and Fresh Flowers exist, is from our champions. So I want to help other farms do that. So yeah, there we go. That's all I got to say.
Awesome. That's awesome. I always like to end with a question, and so I didn't prepare you for this. So yeah, it's okay. And that is, for a piece of advice. I mean, you've given so many great things that takeaways for people to learn from. But if you could distill something down to one sentence, like either that meant a lot to you that someone has shared with you, or that you'd like to share with someone else.
My biggest piece of advice for anybody launching or continuing a small business, be it a floral business or selling glasses, I don't know, would be to tap into your fundamental why. You're not selling flowers for yourself. Like, you can only sustain your business for so long on this, what I'll just call a model of capitalism. I'm not, for the record, not anti-capitalism. I'm just, this concept of exchanging money for goods can only support our spirits for so long. So at the end of the day, anybody who's an entrepreneur needs to find their fundamental why and articulate that for yourself. And then I'd also encourage people to articulate it for their customers. And that fundamental why is the only reason I'm still standing after COVID. If this was about selling flowers, I would have packed up and left 3 months ago. I would be in Mexico if they let me in. But I mean, there's no way to power through this kind of crisis without knowing your why. And my why is honestly about sustaining a diverse ecosystem here at my farm in the heart of a concrete jungle. So if I was just about me, I would be long gone. But this is about box turtles and foxes and Carolina wrens and all these things out here, butterflies and all the things that are relying on me to continue their open space that they can live in. And so that why exists for every entrepreneur. So not that specific why, but a why exists for every entrepreneur. So find it. That's my best advice. Find your why, and then make sure you really stand firm on it. Yeah.
Well, I love that. And I love the fact that you are providing an oasis in the center of a city. And we're approximately in the city, we'll say. And I think that, more than nurturing flowers, nurturing people is a huge credit to you. And I so appreciate you taking the time to being on our podcast. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. And thank you for having the podcast. It's like, I listen to it every week. I'm always excited for every new episode. It'll be weird to listen to myself, but, and I really thank you, Scott, for what you're doing, because you're helping educate this industry as well. So thank you.
Thank you.